The build up to those games on during the week until game day, there is a buzz at the playoff level that you cannot replicate in any regular season game. It just doesn't happen. Even the biggest games we know about, there is a buzz about the playoffs. The opportunity, one of you is moving on, and one of you is putting your helmets away for the year.
Welcome back, or welcome to Y Option. I am your host, Yogi Roth, as always joined by Jim Thornby. Jim, happy Thanksgiving week to you. Happy Thanksgiving week to all of you. And we only have one episode because it's a holiday week, and we are very excited about what we get to dive into. One, we've got our awards, 76 Go 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 awards. We'll dive into those. We got the CFP ranking. We'll dive into that. We got rivalry week. We got senior day. We'll dive into that. And then our guest today, Jim, I think it was really cool. Can't wait to hear your thoughts on it. Tom Wistrcill. You know that name because he's the commissioner of the Big Sky Conference. Their playoffs begin this weekend. They don't have 4 teams. They don't have 12 teams. They have 24 teams in the playoff. And his lens on football, we think, is really unique based on what's happened in the game. So we dive into that with him. So with that, Jim, I know you probably start cooking right after this show, but I'm just kind of curious how your Thanksgiving's going.
Yeah, sure. We're in the mix here. We're not out in the wild like you are.
We're remote.
You got kind of a safari going on behind you, but you just I'm excited for this show because I think there's a lot of good things to talk about here. So.
Yeah, you are, and that's right. We're remote this week. I am in the wild. Check that out. It's a nice setting, little mini getaway with the fam. But football doesn't stop, so I haven't really slept. But don't tell my wife. That's okay. No problem there. Let's get right into our Go 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 awards, and we love these because they were amazing. Jim, I'm really proud of where we landed. But I definitely had some creative remorse afterwards after watching social media. I'll get to that in a second. Okay, from the thrill of victory to the sting of defeat, from the gridiron grit to the sideline spirit, college football, we know this, is driven and has been driven all year and really forever by go-getters. They pump passion into every play, every snap. Some come from distant lands, like I just talked to Jay Toia, who's so proud of his Polynesian heritage, right, calling a UCLA game this weekend. Some come from Miami, like maybe one of our quarterback winners this weekend, and some come right from our backyard. But we partner with 76 to create these Go 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 awards all season. They've been really fun when you look at all the winners. We'll get into that next week. We celebrate players, plays, and coaches who go above and beyond to simply just keep going. So with that, Jim, who are our 4 award winners this week?
Well, you're spoiled a little there with the Miami kid at Cal as a 5-star QB. I mean, 98 yards with my boys. You know, what else more is there to say there? I mean, he hit 156 of his 209 passing yards in that fourth quarter. So kudos to Mr. Fernando Mendoza. Go, go, go. I mean, Ashton Genty, the 5th time he's won this award this year. He topped 2,000 for the season. He missed pretty much the entire third quarter because he got banged up. Came back, kind of sealed the game away. Even though he didn't have the game-winning touchdown, like he kind of drove down that whole way for that one. So he's got 8 runs of 60-plus yards this season, the most since at least 2016, as far as back as I can find right now. That dude, again, a multi-time winner, Cam Scadaboo, 3 touchdowns there in the first half to build up that 21-0 lead at BYU, which every one of those points was needed and how that game ended. Cam also had the impromptu autograph session after that 3rd touchdown, which the post-game, or I don't know if it was I think it was the post-game interview. I don't think it was the weekly press conference. It was the post-game interview where they go, Cam, what was up with that? And Kenny was like, yeah, what was up with that? It's great. Headset hero, kudos to Trent Bray. I mean, man, what a rough season those guys have had. The injuries just piling on top of each other all back since spring ball. And then to get that big win over Washington State, Hayes, the 55-yard field goal with 20 seconds left. Kudos to them, man. They really needed that. And now, this week, we'll talk about that a little more. it's Trent Bray going up against Boise State. Bowl eligibility on the line for Oregon State. A whole lot on the line for Boise State. So fun winners this week.
Fun winners indeed on so many levels. So it wasn't buyer's remorse because Fernando, I'm a big fan of you, love you, man. But when I watched the Cal equipment manager, when I saw him take that dude down and body slam him, and then the reaction of the Cal team, like he deserves something. Like you were that dude. Like you were the guy we all want on our team. Like whether it's like a hubcap gets stolen from our front yard, newspaper gets stolen, helmet gets taken. I mean, that was amazing, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen the video, I mean, it's everywhere on social media. But like, in the chaos of all everybody rushing the field after the game, the Cal fan, some I think I'll say a Cal fan just to randomly put a thing on him.
Put it on Cal.
He goes and he just kind of just try and sneak and grab a helmet off the bench area and then just take off. And this dude like hunted him down. Like, I mean, he made like, it was like a Ray Lewis, like tracking a ball carrier and just taking it. It's great. So, I mean, it's not hard to find on social, like Dion says, it ain't hard to find.
And Trevor Skogerbo is, I hope I'm not mispronouncing that, but if Trevor, great job. Mad props. You go a legend. As I watched it, I was like, is somebody trying to take the axe? Like, what is going on there? Like, you get to zoom in to be like, what is happening? Because we all know how they protect that. I do think that for Ash and Ginty, I think we should because Jim and I are going to be going to New York City for the Heisman. Jim finally booked all my stuff, so we're good there. I feel like we need to bring him a hat or something because like he's just won everything. Like he's just going to win like the most amount of go-go goers. So we just give him a bunch of gas, like some gas cards from 76. We got to do something to love this dude up. And I think for Trent Bray, man, here we are, Washington State. 3 weeks ago, we're talking about them knocking on the door in the CFP. 2 straight losses. And I think to the point of the Pac-12, if we zoom out, as one of our top listeners, Ken Black, always reminds us to do, zoom out. I think we zoom out and say this is pretty good for the Pac-12 to a certain degree, right? You got your 2 teams. You got their storylines at the end of the year. Almost 1 million people, peak viewership in the fourth quarter of that game going up against Alabama and Oklahoma. Teddy ball game, Ryan Leaf, Nigel Burton. Well done, fellas. Well done. All right, let's get to the CFP. Like, should we be worried right now? Is it like, dude, just let them play another 2 games? Like, where do you sit on the positioning of where everything is and what you took away from last night?
Yeah, I mean, get ready to save a lot of time for my take on all this.
Okay, here we go.
I'm pretty okay with what they did. I mean, like, I don't really have a lot of issues. Like, I look at it like, Indiana, they dropped 5 spots to number 10. I thought that was pretty warranted. I think Indiana showed in that game, if not for what happened on those 2 punt plays, they're right there. Ohio State obviously put a little punctuation at the end of that game, which I think we can talk about a little bit later.
Hello.
I don't really have any major issues. I think anything that's kind of one way or another here, again, this is still just a snapshot. This is not how like people get too tied into what they are right now, because we're going to see how these things play out. I mean, I think one of the big games this weekend is Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M, unless they win the SEC now, because they're now down to 20, but if they win this game, they make the SEC title game, and then they'll face Georgia, and they would have to beat Georgia to get in my mind. I don't think they're leaping anybody from that far out. Texas, they win this game. They win this. They beat Texas A&M. They're in. Oregon's already in. Ohio State's already in. Penn State is. Unless they somehow lose to Maryland, they're in. Notre Dame has to beat SC. I don't think they're getting in with another loss. Miami, I think as long as they beat Syracuse, they're probably getting in. Georgia, same deal. I think they're probably in, but they don't want to lose to Georgia Tech to find out. Indiana, again, same thing. They win and they beat Purdue, they're in. All these teams, I think we're starting to really get to the point, like, we know who the teams are for the most point at right now. So it'll be a little bit of fine tuning, and I think. I think the ACC is in pretty good shape to get 2 bids right now, assuming that Miami and SMU both take care of business this weekend. But if they don't, then we'll see. I think it all kind of sets up right now for the kind of the one of the second probably biggest game of the weekend behind that Texas A&M is Clemson, South Carolina, with both of them on the outside sitting in. And I think the winner of that game is just going to be the most disappointed team in the country.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go upset city right now I'm going to go Cal Bears. I don't think their record has indicated who they are. I love the SMU story. I think it's great. We all know the story of what SMU should really be in. I don't know if they'll be able to handle this one. We'll see. They'll have a crowd there, right? They took down Pitt in a home game about a month ago. Can they finish off against the Cal Bears with everything at stake? Maybe, but I'm going to go upset. I think Cal can get one. I think they finally get one. They finish with incredible juice, and they're going to need to, just based on all the things that are about to happen with the calendar, which we'll get into coming up.
That would really open up a potential wild scenario there. So let's say Cal beats SMU, Miami still beats Syracuse to get in, Clemson beats South Carolina, and then SMU beats Miami to win the ACC. You would think that SMU at that point would probably still be among the top 5 highest ranked conference champions, but that could get a little dicey for them. I mean,
Okay.
because that's where you kind of have to be like, okay, let's watch Tulane and see what they do in the AAC. Because if they beat Army, they'll move up a few more rungs. So that could be pretty interesting right there.
Okay, so you've been doing like a version of what went viral earlier this week of what Heather Dinich said, who we're big fans of. But Jim Thornby has been trumpeting the facts around the CFP for a long time and been helping out many media members for a long time, but specifically this year based on, to your point, being the 4 highest ranked conference champions. Why do we really care about them on the West Coast? Well, we'll get into it with the Big 12 and Arizona State here in a minute, but also for the future, right? As the Pac-12 comes back together, this is a great example of why you want that conference to be really strong and how the winner of that league, as long as you're not a 4-loss team or a 3-loss team, like you're going to have every shot to have a pseudo automatic bid into the CFP. We're seeing pseudo chaos.
Yes, I was going to say, you're seeing right now there are no automatics. Like
No,
right now. I mean, right now, the Big Ten is getting their champion. The SEC champ will get in, because even if Texas A&M, if they win both, they'll move up. By beating Texas and by beating Georgia, they'll move up high enough that it won't matter at that point. But beyond that, it gets a little and that's why you look at the Big 12. I mean, it is chaos, because they could have. I mean, it's probably asking too much for them to get 2 teams in right now, just based on where they all sit in the rankings. They would need a lot of help below them. ASU right now probably a little underranked, I think would be fair to say, with those 3 SEC teams all sitting in front of them.
Yes.
Maybe just getting to the championship game would be enough. Even just getting to it, beating Arizona and getting in the mix would be enough to kind of leapfrog them for the conference to kind of be like, or for the committee to be like, okay, this is a team that belongs in the mix. But I mean, you look at it, and we're not going to break all these down, because right now there's still 9 teams in the running for the Big 12 title. So my thoughts with Matt Enser and the crew there at the Big 12 office. But right now you've got 4 teams that are all 7-2. And if all 4 of those teams, Arizona State, Colorado, BYU, Iowa State, if they all 4 of them win, then the game is Arizona State, Iowa State. I'm not even going to pretend that I can pick out all the different if, then, and or buts.
Somebody else.
Godspeed to those guys this weekend. We'll see how it all plays out this week. But those 4 games should be really fun to watch.
All right, so I want to get into that in a second, but I just want to make a statement that has been on my mind for a while. It's not an invitational. It's not an invitational. So let's just talk to our friends in the South. I get the strength of the SEC. Nobody's trying to downplay that. But just because you have an incredible fan base and a really gifted roster on paper, if you have 3 losses, I don't think you can be in the discussion unless you, to your point, Jim, like you go win the conference championship, then let's have that dialogue. Bama was blown out by Oklahoma. I want to hear your point on that because a lot has been made of their quarterback and the attempted trip and the interception, which I had to go back and check out. Wasn't a good look. Ole Miss loses to Florida, who's unranked. Georgia, I get what the team is, but you struggled for a couple quarters against UMass. You were getting drilled by Bama. You got smoked by Ole Miss. Props on the comeback against Bama. That was an amazing game. We all know that. One of the top games of the year, probably top 3 game. Tennessee, you played UTEP. You beat Bama, but you beat them at home, right? And you start comping all these things where, like, you know, Bama loses to a 6-5 Vandy team. At the time, it's a really impressive Vandy team, but now, like, 6-5 is just 6-5. You know, they were tight with a Wisconsin team that just got drilled last week. Like, you lose. Like, I just think you start playing it out, and you're like, oh, let me take away the logo and all the things. You're like, yeah, you got to go to the record, right? You know, A&M, it was an incredible game. I was watching the airport over the weekend and multiple overtime games to Auburn, but you lost. You know, like, I just think some of that stuff can't get swept under the carpet. Like, well, this isn't the Maui Invitational. That's my real point.
And it'll be interesting too, because, like, you know, say Texas loses. I mean, their previous loss was to Georgia, which is obviously a good team, but they got smashed in that game. I mean, that was no mistake about that. And it feels like a lot of Texas's resume is built on that Week 2 win in the Big House over Michigan, when everybody thought Michigan, you know, defending national champions, you know, and all this stuff. But as we've come to see, Michigan is a pretty average team this year. That's just who they are. And it's funny too, because I know Quinn Ewers, like, his ankle was a little banged up this week, so they weren't sure if he was going to play. And so here come all the Florida State fans. Like, yeah. Like, oh, well, then they shouldn't play. I mean, we've seen historically that if your quarterback is hurt at this point in time, like, you're eliminated. So it's just funny. I mean, these things will play out this weekend. But I think as of right now, the committee has done the right thing as far as who the teams are that are supposed to be in there. You know, a lot was made, you know, at 12:30 Pacific on Saturday. Indiana's out. And I was just like, slow down. A lot happened from the point of that end of that game. So we'll still see probably a lot more happening this weekend as well.
Ready, set, dream cabin nestled in the woods. Just 4 hours to go. New job halfway across the country. Butterflies before a first date. Wherever you go, 76 fuels all the ways you go, go, go.
And again, we've got a great interview coming up with Tom Wistrcill of the Big Sky Conference. Really excited about that. So to that point, before we get to that, I want your thoughts on Travis Hunter. Not a Thorpe finalist, is for Maxwell, is for Big Nerick. I think we assume he's going to go to New York City for the Heisman. I think it's just an interesting conversation. Like, you had Deion Sanders, the head coach of Colorado, saying, like, he's just giving him his Thorpe Award, which I kind of thought was pretty creative of a response. You can't really argue his talent. And you can't argue the talent of other players either. Like, we're not here to knock on the 3 finalists for that award. But I'm just kind of curious your take. Like, when I talk to other people in college football, they're kind of like, you know, they're critical of him. Like, why is he always doing the Heisman? Like, hey, dude, like, just be the guy. Like it's just an interesting discussion. I don't think he shouldn't get the award because he's done the Heisman pose 5 times, you know, or does it every time he's playing, it seems like. Yeah. But I do think that it's worthy of some dialogue because it's taken up a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, as we've talked about this in the past, where his talent is hard to quantify at times. And unfortunately for him, sometimes it's people try to quantify it by the number of snaps he plays every game. Like, maybe that's good for the Heisman race, but I don't necessarily think like that's where you can say like, oh, he needs to be, you know, he should be a Bolitnikov finalist and he should be a Thorpe finalist. Like just because he's the quasi front runner for the Heisman right now means that he is the one of the top three wide receivers or the top three DBs. Now, the Bolitnikov voters have put him in the top three of that. I think he's going to lose to another Big 12 receiver in Tetero McMillan, because I think as just a receiver, McMillan is the superior player. Now, obviously, T-Mac is not playing on defense as well, so that goes into a different category. But when you're just looking at what they do as receiver, I think T-Mac is better. Now, when you take it over to the Thorpe, do I think he should be one of the three finalists? Probably, but I don't think he's the favorite. I don't think he is the best DB in there. I think it's because he's the combination of the two is what kind of elevates him up there. But if it's funny because if you look at like I don't want to put everything on PFF, but if you look at PFF and the ratings that they do, Travis Hunter is the 13th best DB in the country this year. Now, the guy that I think is probably going to win the Thorpe Award, Caleb Downs at Ohio State, he's 53rd. According to that. So that kind of like makes you see like there's like you can't look at that as necessarily the way it all goes because there's so many intangibles in that position. It's not like I've seen people post like, oh, here's Travis Hunter stats and here's the three finalists. It's like, see, he's got like more tackle, like people. That's the Thorpe Award is not an award based on how many tackles you have. It's a very, I think it's a little bit more of a hard to quantify award. But to your point, I think there might be, a little bit of fatigue of people trying to, of the Colorado side of things, trying to convince people that Travis Hunter is the best. Like there's no doubt in most people's minds that Travis Hunter is probably the most talented player in college football. But that doesn't always mean that you're for this niche award or this niche award that you are the right person for that award.
Yeah, I think that's really thoughtful. That's a really good response, and that's what we're trying to do here at Y Option. As we'll have referenced college football through the lens of the West, and it's thoughtful conversation in that regard. The Big Ten. Oregon didn't play last week. Dylan Gabriel, to me, is on my Heisman ballot right now, where I sit. I need another couple slots, though, on my Heisman ballot because I think Travis is worthy of it. Cam Scatterbo is worthy of it. Tyler Warren is worthy of it. Ashton Chinty is worthy of it. Like, it's a pretty cool list. Cam Ward is worthy of it. And again, like, will all the votes split? We'll find out. We'll talk about that in another episode. But the Big Ten, UW, Oregon. I saw a really cool poll from, I think it was Tony Castricone on social media, the play-by-play voice of UW, and it was like, what statement added more vitriol to the Washington-Oregon rivalry? And it was like the point with 70 points. You know what I'm talking about? Jake Browning.
Jake Browning, yeah.
Or was it like the last couple games because Dan Lanning hasn't beaten them? And there were two other ones from like back in history. But I think of those two and I'm like, oh, that's a pretty cool thought. Like these fan bases do not like one another. And for Oregon, they haven't been able to get over that hump since Dan Lanning has taken over. And Kalen DeBoer, of course, led them to a national championship and back-to-back wins a year ago. And I'll get to my thought on that game and the comp to the Big Ten title this year. But Washington, Oregon, in Eugene, coming off a bye in advance of the Big Ten title. Like, I don't know how much better you can be positioned if you're the Oregon Ducks, other than like, who was it 5 years ago? It was like SC had a bye in their last game before playing in the championship game or something like that. Other than that, like this is as good of a situation I think as you could have if you're the Ducks.
Yeah, it'll be interesting too because Washington is 0-5 away from Husky Stadium this year. All 6 of their wins are at home.
Away
yeah.
from Husky Stadium, like far away.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Interesting to see because you saw I don't know if you saw the depth chart that came out this week for UW, and it still, it still has Damon Williams as the backup. So I'm curious, how much do you think we're going to see him play at quarterback this week? I think it's going to be a lot more than we've seen in the past.
Oh yeah, I think he's gonna. I mean, I would play him a ton. Now, I think there's an argument to say, hey, Brent, keep Will Rogers in. He's steady. He's been on the road. He's played in these environments, but like they haven't done well really on the road. They've had moments. They haven't been. The scores have been bad, but I've called a couple of those games. Like they weren't as bad as the score indicated at the end.
Right.
So he's okay. But I think Damon Williams, Elite 11 quarterback, you've been around him. I've been around him a bunch. Like he's at the place now where like I don't think the road game is going to swallow him. Now, the defense might swallow him. Like the scheme might swallow. Like there'll be moments that'll be his first, but I think he gives them their best chance because against Oregon, you do want to come out the gates swinging hard. Like you go down 17-0, like good luck. Like they're going to squeeze you and squeeze you and squeeze you and run the ball and the clock's going to bleed and they're going to bring pressure. Like that to me is not the time to insert this freshman in. If it was me, I'd be riding with Damon Williams in this game. You know, and I love what Will Rogers has done and how he's been steady in the transition of that program, and he'll get his shot to play somewhere after this. But Damon Williams not only is the future, but he's played well. Yeah. And I think you have to. How are you going to get Mateo Uyangole, Tatum Tuioti, like da 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 da? Bro, like I just think you need a guy that can move. And the offensive line is just average at best, I think, at UW, if we're being honest. So I would be going with Damon Williams from the jump in this one. And if he doesn't, I'd imagine he plays a ton.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, because you are a 6-5 team. You kind of know what you are. You're not, you're playing right now. You're just kind of playing for bowl position. And it's not like, it's, mix or match at this point of which bowl you're going to go to. They're all at the level of where they're at. They're all pretty much the same. So I think for them, it is that opportunity to be like, okay, let's take that step into the future. Like, thank you, Will Rogers, for everything you've accomplished. We couldn't have done this season without you, but now it's his time. And now I think the other part of the Big Ten is like obviously Oregon definitely still wants to win this game and needs to win this game to keep where they are. But it's who are they going to play next week? Yeah. And then, that's going to be very dependent on the Michigan-Ohio State game. Because if Ohio State wins, it's them. If they don't win, then it's Penn State if they win. Then if Ohio State and Penn State both lose, Indiana can then sneak their way back in with a win. So I think it's going to be probably Ohio State. I think because of what has happened the last 3 years, that Ohio State it's just going to be turned up. It's going to be turned up so much. Like to the point I kind of alluded to this earlier, at the, when in the post game on the sideline with Jenny Taft and Ryan Day was like, well, we said leave no doubt, with Indiana, like they're operating on a different, like, level of, I don't want to say desperation is not the right word because they're not desperate. But just urgency. a level of focus and urgency and maybe even anger is a word to use there, and probably fear of what happens from their fan base if they don't win this game. Like, you just see the counter, whatever is it, 1,400 or whatever, how many days it's been the last time since Ohio State has beat them. So I think like this game, I think will be pretty chippy.
Yeah, I think it'll be chippy. Surprise, surprise, early game. So I'm gonna get to the Rose Bowl. I got UCLA at noon.
Ohio State at 9 a.m. Pacific, never.
Yeah. So I can't wait. I'm gonna wake up super early. I got Fresno State, UCLA this weekend on the Big Ten Network. Midday game going right up against USC, Notre Dame. So here we go, right up against Penn State, Maryland. Here we go. Like end of the season, we're gonna finish strong. I will not miss as many snaps as possible in this game. I think that when you look at Michigan, defensively, they're built to play in this game. Offensively, they have to cut it loose in this game. Davis Warren has to not hesitate at all against this defense. If they can do that, they'll have their shot. Here's the thing. My biggest takeaways, and we'll do a deep takeaway dive for my first year in the Big Ten, but I've told you this to you, Jim, many times. Number one, it's a lack of possessions. Like this league, I will be shocked if both teams have more than 2 possessions in the first quarter. It'll be one and a couple plays. That's how I think this thing will start in this game. That's part of the Big Ten football. 2, quarterback play in the Big Ten has not been very impressive, right? So who's going to be the better player? They both have flashed. I would go Will Howard. He's been more consistent. I think what he does with his legs is impressive. Alex Orji, does he have a role? What's going on there at Michigan in the quarterback room? They just signed reportedly a $10 million quarterback, according to some people that I don't even want to get into on social media. So, like, what is that room? Are they already into the portal? Like, well, how is Alex Orji's headspace? I think he could be an impact in this game with his legs. I'd be curious about that. And then I think the third thing is that the best teams in the Big Ten, and I think there's 3, Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State, they just lean on you. You have your moment. So let's look at Ohio State's moments. In their last 3 games, Purdue, 0-0 after the first quarter, I believe. Northwestern, 7-0 after the first quarter, or vice versa in those 2 games. Last week, Indiana should have been 7-7 going into half. Let's be honest. They drop a punt, and all of a sudden it's 14-7. They give up a punt return on the first possession of the third quarter. Caleb Downs, who was rightfully so a finalist for the Thorpe Award, he goes off and it's game over. But my point is that, like, Michigan State, 3 drives inside the 20 in the first half, no points. Like, I think Ohio State, I don't think they're like that dominant. I don't think we've seen a team like that has been like Georgia in the past, or Bama in 2020, or SC back in the day when I was there. They haven't done that to teams. They should be doing that to teams based on the roster, the leave no doubt, the whole 9 years. They haven't done that, but they've just leaned on you. So Michigan has to take their shot. And when they have it, they can't miss. Right? What's the show that Ted Robinson used once when SC beat Oregon State? If you're going to take a shot at the champ, like, you best not miss the wire.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's their shot. I think Ohio State will win. I think they will try to tack it on late, but I do think we got a shot for a real classic game in that regard. And I hope so, just for college football. I think for USC, I want to get to that in the Big Ten before we get to our guest, Tom Wistrcill.
Yeah, another classic matchup there.
Another classic matchup. 3 weeks ago, I was saying SC, I think, is going to beat Notre Dame. After watching them their last 2 games, I can't go down that road anymore. I mean, I just think their last 2 games against Nebraska, you watch your game against SC, they're just moments of being sloppy, if I'm being honest. Like, it just doesn't look sharp. You know, part of that is you've got a new quarterback in Jade Mayava, whose game is where he's going to scramble, he's going to move, and he's going to create plays, whether he's throwing up to Deuce Robinson against Nebraska or touchdown to Jacoby Lane against UCLA in the rivalry game. But to me, against Notre Dame, that just looks like a Big Ten team in terms of they can run the football. It's kind of formulaic. They're just going to lean on you. I think SC's going to have to be wide open in this one. They got every shot to go get it, but they're going to have to be clean and efficient. The ball's going to have to be out on time. A couple scramble plays if you want. A la Caleb when he won the Heisman a couple years ago and did his Heisman post. He'll be leading them out of the tunnel. I'm not as confident in the Trojans now after the last couple games than I was 3 weeks ago heading into this game against Notre Dame.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And it's funny because it seems like there's been, at least from the online fan base of USC, some like revisionist history of, and I think it's probably because they just want Mayava to succeed as they will. They're like, oh, they finally won a close game. And it was like, do you not remember week 1 when Miller Moss led you to the win over LSU? Like, it's like, I think there's still too much of that as like, oh, this was like it was Miller's problem. It definitely was not Miller's problem. This is a total team problem that they need to figure out. Now, it's one of those things where we talked about with when it was the Kansas and BYU game, where Kansas had lost so many close games and BYU had won so many close games, and at some point the law averages. I mean, who knows? Maybe this is the point where USC, they find, because again, there's not a question of USC having enough talent to compete in this game. I think that they're, arguably just as talented as Notre Dame. So maybe they can like get it together for 60 minutes, play a complete game, and do this because they got the playmakers there. And Notre Dame is still like, it feels like they're still that Notre Dame factor of like getting the benefit of the doubt all the time. This is still a team that lost to Northern Illinois.
Fair, totally.
I mean, granted, they've wiped the floor with everybody since, but that's still there. And people want to be like, oh, the committee has kind of forgotten about that. Like, they're not forgetting anything. They're waiting to see if they can finish the job.
Yeah, and I think it's a fair point. Like they beat A&M, huge win to start the season, right? Think about
Yeah.
that. You referenced LSU. That was the same weekend. We're thinking SC. Here's the tilt at the end of the year. Who's going to win and get into the playoff? Blah blah blah. But you look at Notre Dame's schedule, and I think it's fair, right? I'm just going to list the names. Now they've drilled everybody. Purdue, since that Northern Illinois loss. Purdue, Miami of Ohio, Louisville, Stanford, Georgia Tech, Navy, Florida State, Virginia, Army. Like, I just think it's super fair to say they haven't gone through, even if it's like an 8-game SEC slate, a 9-game Big Ten slate, an ACC I think I said SEC or ACC, SEC 8-game slate, ACC 8-game slate, Big 12 9-game slate. Like, they haven't done that. So I think it's fair to look at this game and be like, they've done what they're supposed to do. They haven't seen any type of firepower. Like, who's the best quarterback they've faced?
Ooh, good question.
I mean, think about it. Like Hudson Card?
Taylor Shuck?
Yeah, Taylor Shuck. Like
Tyler
Tyler
Shuck,
yeah, Tyler Shuck. So, like, I just think that it's got a shot to be a really cool game. But if they run the ball, if they play that Big Ten style of football that I just referenced, it'll be them all day. I hope it's a great one. It'll be on CBS. They'll crush it. It'll look great. The Collie will be full. Who knows? Fans always turn out for this one. So we'll see if they can play spoiler. Nothing will make SC fans feel better, and nothing will help in recruiting. So before we get to our guest today, presented by our founding partner, 76, next week is signing day on Wednesday. The week after that, the portal officially opens. But by that, like, you can go in the portal, just to be clear. People have. You just can't go somewhere yet. On the 9th, you can start that journey to somewhere. So come Saturday night, I think at the SC game specifically. I even think of the UCLA game. I want to give a note on that too as well. What are they going to decide to do at quarterback? Like, what's USC going to decide after the game? I think it's fair to say they've decided Miller Moss is in the future. Is Jade Mayava, because they just got a huge recruit, Hassan Longstreet from Elite 11, really gifted player, flipped from A&M. Do they go try to get somebody in the portal or not? I don't know. Like, can you go win the Big Ten with Jade Mayava based on what we've seen? Not based on what I've seen, but I'm not at practice every day. Based on what Lincoln Riley's seen every day and Luke Heward, maybe. It'll be a different style of that offense. And I'd be all for it. I think he's a talented player. But these next, we are Wednesday. So Saturday night, when your game ends, then the next 3 days will be crazy. Coaches will not be going on the road. I learned that this week. I thought you can go on the road like you always could. But you can never go on the road in the last weekend before signing day because they don't want players to be flipped. It was like kind of calm the chaos in, but there's not even a week. There's not even a week where you can go on the road. So I just think that, like, we are going to be in this really chaotic time. I thought Lincoln Riley hit it on yesterday in his post-practice interview where he talked about, like, schools are dropping players too now. You kind of have to. Like, it's that world. So, like, the collegiality, the student-athlete experience, like, yes, love it. But in this world of recruiting, it is like right now, for at least for the next couple months until revenue sharing starts, it's dollars and cents, y'all. Like, it is like, what do we need? It's cutthroat. And not only are we going to cut the walk-ons, but we might cut a couple scholarship guys too. So it is about to be a really chaotic time. We will do a deep dive on that. And then for the Bruins, just a note, I'll be curious to see what happens with them at quarterback. Had a chance to talk to Ethan Garbers yesterday. He's planning on going to the NFL and trying that journey. There's a world where he can petition for another year. So stay tuned, right? What do they do at quarterback? They're not going bowling. I think for the teams that aren't going bowling, it might be easier than the 6-7 win teams and now have to navigate the portal, a roster, practice, coaches, coaching changes. Like, Sit back and enjoy it all. But,
yeah, I think that's a perfect segue there to our guest.
well said. Okay, so this is our favorite part of all of these episodes. It is our guest presented by our founding partner, 76, keeping you in the know on the go, go, go. Today's guest, Big Sky Commissioner Tom Wistrcill. He is in his 5th year as the commissioner of the Big Sky Conference. He's been at power conferences as well, spent time in Wisconsin, was athletic director at Akron. He's been on all the committees, but most importantly for him and his conference this weekend, to kick off the playoffs. They have 5 teams in, including the number 1 seed, including our friend Jason Eck at Idaho. We love him. The fellas at UC Davis, we love that program and everything that stands for. But Montana State, Montana, Northern Arizona, they round out those 5 teams. We talked to him about all things. Of course, what is it like to live an expanded playoff? What is it like to live in a world where it's a little bit chaotic, but not as chaotic? And then what does he project? Could he have seen it coming? What does he think about the Pac-12? Is he worried about one of his teams going to the Pac-12? So we go there on all the things, as well as his leadership philosophy and how he sees the craft and the game. Really enjoyed finally getting this conversation on the books. Jim, great job by you. Here's our conversation presented by our founding partner, 76, Big Sky Commissioner Tom Wistrcill. And with that, we welcome the aforementioned Big Sky Commissioner Tom Wistrcill. Commissioner, thank you for coming on. We've been talking about this, I feel like, for years now. Obviously, I've known a ton about you with your colleague Dan Satter, who was, 20 years ago or so. I was with him at Pitt. But glad we got to finally make it happen. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, great to be with you, Yogi, and excited for the conversation.
Yes. Well, there's a lot to talk about. How about this start with congratulations? You got 5 teams in the playoffs. And just to level set for everybody, we talked a little bit before you came on. This is really cool because it's Thanksgiving weekend. It is not only the end of the FBS regular season, but the start of the FCS playoffs. The Big Sky, the conference you oversee, has 5 teams in the playoff, the most of any conference in America, including the top seed in Montana State. I know a bunch of the coaches in your league called Oregon, Idaho. I've known Jason Eck for 24 years. I almost went to Idaho with Coach Holt way back in the day when he was there. So I just wonder, what is it like for you now in life? We're in this crazy world of college football, and your league is thriving with the playoffs kicking off this weekend.
Well, first of all, Yogi, great to be with you as always, and appreciate everything you do, not only to promote college sports, but FCS football, and just out west. Your presence is important to what all of us are trying to do. So, thanks for that. We're really excited, and when you think about the Big Sky, we want people to think about us as a football conference. It's extremely important to all 12 of our football playing institutions. They put a tremendous amount of resources towards it. And, I've been privileged in my career. I've worked at Power Fives. I was a G5 AD for a while and now an FCS commissioner. And it's wonderful to be at this level where, the resources match the expectations. And that's the cool things about the top of FCS football. We have a chance to win a national title every year in the Big Sky in football. Our best team has the chance to win the national title. Now, we haven't won one in a while, but that's the great thing about our league. All 12 of our teams have, their first goal is to win the Big Sky. And their second goal would be to get in the playoffs, and their third goal, the ultimate prize, to win the national title. And we have chances to do that. We have the number 1 seed. We have multiple teams getting buys. And, we've been fortunate. We've done playoffs the right way in FCS for years. And I'm glad that FBS gets to do it now. They get a little taste of this. But it's a great time of year. Everybody's 0-0 now, right? And you got to beat the team in front of you and get a chance to go to Frisco and play for a national championship in a wonderful setting. And so I'm really excited. It's a special time, as you said.
Yeah, that place in Frisco is dynamic. Been there a few times with quarterback events. Okay, resources matching expectations. I love that line you just said, and I appreciate the kind words off the top. So I'm traveling all over the country now. Spent 20 years on the West Coast. I just had a game in Maryland and in Rutgers, and I'm doing the whole Big Ten thing now. And resources are a hot topic, All right, expectations are a hot topic. So when you say that, let's double down on that. Like, what do you mean by resources match expectations? And can you paint a picture for the listeners? Because I think it's such a treat to have you on. Of like, what does resources mean in the Big Sky? Because everywhere else, like resources are insane, but maybe they're still not good enough.
Yeah. So what I mean by that is, every football program in the country has expectations at the beginning of the year. And I'll just take, the places I've been, so like when I was at Wisconsin 20 some years ago, our expectations were to compete for a Big Ten championship. And then that sets you up to go to the Rose Bowl. And so that was exciting, right? And we had similar expectations at Minnesota, but we just didn't have as good a program then compared to Wisconsin. Then I went to Akron. And so at Akron, our goal was, can we get bowl eligible? Can we get to 6 wins? And we weren't worried about trying to win a national championship in football at Akron. So, but in the Big Sky, the expectation is you have to fund your program at a level from all areas, your coaching salaries, your pool for assistant coaches, your recruiting pool. Well, where are you going to get players? How are you getting those players? How are you developing them once you get them? Do you have facilities that match that? Do you have an indoor practice facility? We have some places in some tough weather, right? What's your schedule look like? Are you scheduling the right way to try to get a deep run in the playoffs? By that, are you playing enough FCS opponents? Are you buying some home games because you're going to win those games, and then you're going to play enough tough conference teams to get a bid? So you have to make sure that, first of all, what are your expectations? And then do you have the revenue opportunities to fund those? And I think every football program at every level has to make that decision. Some of them are kidding themselves with their funding models, and others are funding we're just going to put money at everything and hope it works. There's a lot of bad money being thrown around at some football programs. And so, so to me, that's what's important is you have to decide as the leader of a program. And for us in the Big Sky, like I said, it's very clear what the expectation is. And, when you have 12 teams in the league, if you finish in the upper half, you have a good chance to make the playoffs. And that's pretty special because, like I said, that's the reward at the end. So, without getting into a lot of numbers and getting, it needs this many million here and this many million here, hopefully that gives you more of a indication of kind of where my thought was.
Yeah, I think it's well said. Like I'm a believer that if I just went to any school in, let's just call it big time Power 4 college football, and I said, hey, we're going to pay you, I'm just going to throw out a number, $500,000. I think they'd all say, heck yeah, let me go coach football. Like I just think the numbers keep growing and growing. So it's like, yeah, why wouldn't I take it? It's the whole free market society, which I understand and totally get, and live part of it to be frank as well. But I worry in regard to the sport. So I want to hit you on that. But before you're leading all these schools you reference. Like, can you take us through like the lens of a commissioner's job? Like, how do you lead? Like, what's your philosophy to guiding these places that all have different ideologies, different footprint, all are highly competitive. I'm sure all have aspirations. And I'm just curious for you, as the world that I'm living in seems chaotic at times, I wonder what it's like for you guys. Maybe not as much cameras on you or writers around you, but I'm sure you have to navigate this. So can you just drop into your leadership approach and how you navigate that?
So you're going to laugh at this, Yogi, but the phrase I use is if all the schools are 80% happy with me, I'm doing a good job.
It's like my kids.
So yeah, and it's exactly the way it is. Yeah. So, and what I mean by that is if some are 100% happy with me, then some are like 20% happy with me, and that's bad. Right. So you're right. Every conference has really wide variances in everything from funding to success to different sports they're successful in, to the emphasis that some schools put on athletics more than others, to the number of fans that come to games, buy tickets, donate money. I mean, there's vast differences in every league. And so the job of the commissioner is to figure out where do you find that middle ground. There's a lot of negotiation that goes on. It's all about communication and fairness. And it's all about kind of getting to the root of any issues, getting people to work together when they kind of don't like each other because that other team beat us by 40 last weekend. It's those types of things that you're working on. I look at it as you have to be able to block and tackle really well. What do I mean by that? That's, what are the basic things? So you have to be, we need to run great championship events. Our focus on, and this came from one of my mentors, Joel Maturi, who was the AD at Minnesota for a long time. And Joel used to always say, if I'm doing the right things for the student athletes, I sleep well at night. And so I've carried that through with me for 25 years. Our focus on the student athlete experience around every event that the Big Sky touches. So like, for example, this weekend we have the volleyball championship in Sacramento. And so it's over Thanksgiving, and that kind of sucks, right? So what are we doing for those student athletes so they can not just enjoy being part of a championship experience, but is there something else we can do that they can look back on and say, hey, remember that time we were in Sacramento for the volleyball tournament? This was really cool. So that's the job of the commissioners. How do you blend all of those different things together? And to me, like I said, the blocking and tackling part of running championship events, making sure the schedules are set in a way that doesn't penalize teams in an unfair way. Do we have our officials properly trained? Do they know the expectations that we have for them? And can they understand that the fans aren't going to like them no matter what happens? So, that's part of being official, right? But those are the types of things that we got to do well as a conference. That's the base layer. So then the rest of it is all on top of it. The student athlete experience, the branding, the marketing, the revenue piece that everybody tries to increase every year. So that's what makes the job fun. Every place is different. Every school's different. Then you add in the personalities and the egos and the money, and it makes it a dynamic environment.
Yeah, no easy days, I'd imagine. No lazy days. Right? So something always happened, which I know you love, just based on talking to some of your colleagues. Okay, I have a question for you. So you talked about the student athlete experience. Imagine the word student athlete. Like what is that in this era? Like, I know they call it in Power 4 football, if you will, right? Like, we're entering an era with revenue sharing. We've always been, I think, someone's always been paying players. Now a version of it is legal, which is great. Like, as a former player, would have loved to got some NIL money back in the day. I don't know how much I would have gotten, but we're the different conversation. So I want to hear about that, because I still believe, let's say this, when I'm in my studio at home in LA, I think it's easy to be jaded around the term student athlete. When I go to a campus, you fall in love with the idea of a student athlete. How do you navigate that? What is it like on your campuses? Because regardless of if you're a student athlete at Ohio State or at Idaho State, you still want sweet pictures on your Instagram. You still want to get paid. You still probably think you're not playing enough. You're going through the same things that every 18 to 22-year-old student athlete is going through. And I'm just curious, what is your lens on it? And is the Big Sky lens on student athlete, you think, different? Is it more of a challenge than, call it, in the Big Ten or in the SEC or other parts around the country, places that you have been?
It's a great topic, Yogi, and it's something that we talk about a lot. It's a concern of ours. We like to believe in the Big Sky, we're still the true student athletes. We still have them. We're the true college athletics. And by that, I mean, it's not without its challenges. Yeah. Do we have NIL at some of our schools? Certainly. Some have more money than others, no different than any other level. But the focus from our presidents to ADs to coaches is still the student athlete experience. And can we help them graduate, come in from a girl and a boy to a man and a woman when they leave, help them on their journey? 99% of them are not going pro in their sport. So it's our responsibility to make sure they walk across the stage and get that diploma and find their ways in their professional and personal life. Does that always happen? Of course not. Is it perfect? No. But is that still our focus? Yes. One of my great disappointments in what's happened over the last 5 years, and you've kind of hinted at it, which is the leadership people in college athletics have stopped talking about graduation and student athlete experience. When's the last time you heard, P4 people talk about that, right? And it's a shame. And I don't necessarily blame them, because once you start to sell yourself to money, you're always selling yourself to money. There's no end in sight. And that's one of the great travesties right now, because there are no guardrails around this. And I was speaking late last week to the Arizona Board of Regents about college athletics. And one of the regents asked me about the transfer portal and NIL and all that. And I said, well, until the student athletes at the highest level become employees and we can get a collective bargaining agreement around their compensation, that we can negotiate and have a salary cap, teams are always going to need more money. I was using the Dillingham at Arizona State as an example to the Arizona Board of Regents. They've had a wonderful year, and he's going to need more money to keep his team and to go find new players. And then next year he's going to need more money than that, and then more money than that. And there is no end in sight because there's nothing controlling the money. So until we get that, that's just going to keep rolling at the top of the system. At the Big Sky, we feel we've got some control over it, partly because we don't have enough money to hate each other. We're not fighting over hundreds of millions of dollars. And our schools have been able to keep the focus on success, both on the field and off the field, I think at a fairly balanced level. And unfortunately, we've lost that at other places.
Did you see it coming? Like you were,
I think
Wisconsin.
Yogi, I think anybody, and I credit Bob Bowlesby and Val Ackerman were the chairs of the Transformation Committee. I want to say this was like 4 years ago, and I remember they told us that they had this plan of here's how we were going to structure this and all that, and it never went anywhere. And I think at the moment that we knew the structure wasn't going to happen, it was inevitable that we were going to end at this place. Because, if you're at Alabama and I'm at Auburn, I need to get that football player. I need to win that game. When we play each other, I have to win that game. And if that means I got to donate another $1 million, and whatever I got to do, we're going to do it. And there's no guardrails. So yeah, it's inevitable that it ended up this place. And to me, there's only one solution. And, I know nobody likes talking about student athletes as employees, and there's a lot of problems with it, because if you're at the biggest schools with the biggest brands, let's say Texas, is your diver a pro athlete? No. But is your quarterback? Yeah. If you're paying him $1 million, he's making that because he's the quarterback at Texas. So somehow we got to figure out that structure together, or else we're just going to run like this hamster wheel with no end in sight right now to the amount of money that's flowing in. And that's why, I know that there's congressional hope that, that maybe under new leadership in the different parts of our federal government, we can find some structure. And Senator Cruz, I know, has a bill that he's working on. I don't know the details of it yet, so I'm interested to find out, because, like I said, without any guardrails, no end in sight, Yogi, and that's difficult. It's difficult for everybody because it doesn't make sense to the fan, because players go wherever they want, leave. I mean, who knows? You talk about, we could pick any player in the country. And is there any guarantee if they can come back next year, they're going to stay at that school? No. And, so that's hard. It's hard to build a brand. It's hard to get your fans engaged. Like I said, we're pretty fortunate, the Big Sky. We're very comfortable in who we are. So I feel like we don't have all of those problems. We have some of them, but we don't have all of them. And we kind of go from there.
A lot to unpack there.
Yes. Sorry, I went all over there, Yogi.
No, that's good. I mean, definitely not counting on. Not going to go there. Okay, so to that point, I have an issue with where college athletics is, and there's a lot of things I love. Right, going to these campuses and calling these games has been a magical year again. I am worried about a certain sect of athletes that is dear to me because I lived it. And I want to get your opinion on walk-ons and what's going on there. Jason X said something that went viral after Idaho lost at Oregon. He talked about how he recruits and how they're telling players, come here, play for 2 years. Let us develop you and then go get paid. I've always felt that this is out of left field here, but I've always felt that like we might go to a place where, let's just say, Oregon partners with Idaho and they become a farm system and their coaches coach their system. The players come up, they know the system, the coaches come up. We have a version of that. A tiny version of that is like go to the school, get developed, and then kick out and go get paid somewhere and be really healthy in terms of where you are and the type of player you are. The people that I'm most worried about are these walk-ons. That I called the game last week, and the starting quarterback at Iowa was a walk-on currently, right? I'm calling games all the time where some of these players are walk-ons. You've watched Cam Scadaboo go from Sac State to he's right now top. He's going to get a Heisman vote from me as a Heisman voter where I sit today. So what are your thoughts on a part of the sport, at least at the power level with revenue sharing, is about to be eliminated? And I'm passionate about this because I think that if I'm a freshman walk-on now, I'm about to possibly get cut. And I've got to either transfer down and eliminate this education that I love or just quit. And nobody gave me a warning that this part was going to happen.
The House settlement, the terms you're talking about are forcing really difficult decisions on every campus. Certainly financial decisions, because of the $20 million revenue share at the highest level. But the roster limits are very problematic for every athletic department that I know of. And it doesn't matter where you're at in the pecking order. For us, it's losing a lot of female student athletes. Like we have soccer teams, women's soccer teams that have 40 student athletes, and they love being part of the team, and the roster limit is 28. So now 12 student athletes are being told, to your point, some of them are walk-ons. I'm sorry, you can't be on the team next year. And so I understand some horse trading had to go on between the two sides to get the settlement done. So I can disagree with those numbers just like you as much as I want. The settlement is still really good for college athletics, and for the next 10 years will help us get our house in order, I think, in a better way. But you're right. That football number at 105, that's a problem for a lot of schools. Now, to my knowledge, they haven't determined the exact date of when you have to be at 105 yet. So if they'll allow you to bring in 120, 125 to fall camp, but let's say it's the Saturday before your first game. I'm just making up a date that you have to be at 105. Hopefully that's a little more manageable. It doesn't allow as many walk-ons, but it allows you at least to sort out players that you want to keep. Because I don't think many of conferences, if any, at the FBS level, will go above the 85 scholarships. I think they'll stay at 85. And then that will allow for 20 walk-ons. Not as many as they would like. And at FCS level, we have 63 scholarships that we spread out over 85. So that 85 is gone for us. So if we want to stay at 63 scholarships, we'll spread that out over 105 as well. So I think what you're doing is you're probably cutting a third of your walk-ons at a major football program. And that's unfortunate because, like I said, I think I think those are some players that they would want to keep. Might have been that quarterback at Iowa you mentioned. Selfishly, at the FCS level, this might help us.
Yeah, I agree.
Those players want to play. They're not going to stay. If that football player is from Texas and went to Iowa, they're not going to stay at Iowa if they can go play at Idaho, and get a chance to play. So hopefully, if we play this the right way, and that's why I like Jason Eck's philosophy. The ones that embrace this crazy portal are the ones that are going to be most successful. Use the sales pitch that you have. And I think Jason's pitch is great, which is come to Idaho, play a bunch of football at a really high level where we've sent players to the NFL before. So you're not shortchanging yourself there. Do an awesome job, and then they will come calling for you because they know that if you're good enough to be a good player in the Big Sky, then you can play at the highest level in college football.
Yeah, when quarterbacks and their families ask me for advice on where to go, I never tell them where to go, but I do ask them what matters most. And if it's playing, I often recommend go throw for 3,000 yards at Montana State. Go play in Cody Hawkins' offense at Idaho State. Go light it up versus go sit and you could practice at a high level, but if you're not playing, it's just your value difference. I'll be curious how that shakes out. I'm curious about how the playoff is going to shake out. You referenced it. You got 5 teams going to the playoffs, like away the big sky goes. And your playoff expanded, to my knowledge, from 16 to 24 in 2021. We're in the FBS level, it's going from 4 to 12, and people are loving it and hating it and losing their minds. Like, what do you think the expansion, the impact is going to have? What might you guide football fans and programs based on your experience? And how much fun is it overall to like drop into the playoffs now and have it be better than just, the top 4 teams that are playing in the semifinal?
The playoffs are such a different animal than the regular season. And that's the thing that the fans, the players, the coaches don't know yet because they haven't had a year of it yet. I liken it to you often hear out of the NBA, especially young players in the NBA, that their first playoff experience, they were awful because they weren't ready for what they were used to was regular season NBA. We're playing, this is fun. Oh, it's close to the fourth quarter. We go at each other. One team wins, one team loses. And then the playoff comes, and from the opening tip, everybody's playing as hard as they can. And the rookies, first-year players, NBA players, they are like, whoa, nobody's ever played their hardest for the whole game. Well, that's what happens in the playoffs for football. And we've had it for years in the FCS, and it's special. And that's what FBS is in for. You don't know who you're going to play. It comes up on a screen. All of a sudden, Notre Dame is playing at Texas in the second round, right? Or first round. Pick, and all. It's like, oh, we didn't even think we could play Texas. Well, we're playing Texas, and then the build up to those games on during the week until game day. There is a buzz at the playoff level that you cannot replicate in any regular season game. It just doesn't happen. Even the biggest games we know about, there is a buzz about the playoffs. The opportunity, one of you is moving on, and one of you is putting your helmets away for the year. And it's so special. And like I said, we feel it in the FCS level. I'm glad FBS is doing it this way. I love the fact they're doing home sites the first round. I think it's fabulous. At the FCS level, we do it all the way through until the championship game. But I understand why FBS is doing it because those bowl opportunities at that level are such exceptional events. So I appreciate that. But I think that's the one thing, you don't know what you don't know. And that's what the fans, coaches, and players are in for is how are those teams going to respond in a playoff atmosphere going on the road when, pick a team, right? When Alabama has to go to Penn State in December and play a game, what was I saw the other day? Kentucky played, I forgot who they were playing, but it was the furthest west they'd ever played ever in their whole football history. So I was thinking to myself, what if someday Kentucky makes the playoff and they have to play at Oregon in a playoff game? I mean, those types of things. So it right now it's just words coming out of my mouth, and your listeners that are FBS fans are probably like, oh, sure, Tom, yeah, whatever, but just mark my words that it's different. The playoffs are different. The intensity is different. The game is different. Coaches that have been through it before know how to handle it. Players that haven't been through it before, it's different. But I'm excited.
Yeah. Oh, same here. I mean, Oregon, as you know, they're the Big Ten title. If they lose that game, the 99.9% going to host a home game. Booking my flights just in case. Taking my oldest son, just to your point, it's so unique. All right, this is something that I don't think our listeners and quite frankly, I didn't know either. So I presented when I was working for the Pac-12 to the committee for 5 or 6 years. Jim Thornby and I both did it. And you present with somebody like yourself, who was the commissioner at the time, whether it was Commissioner Scott or Commissioner Kleofkoff. But you go present to 2 people that represented your league, then they would go present to the rest of the committee. Well, at your level, it doesn't happen. The committee is made up of 1 AD from each of the participating conferences, how I understand it. What are your thoughts on that? Like pros and cons of like somebody who's like an athletic director and is on conference calls with all of their colleagues from the representative schools in that league versus 12 people. And if you have any tie to the league that you work with, you can't even be in the conversation. Like you're recused, you're kicked out of the room.
Yeah, it's how we've always done it. There are pros and cons to it. What I do like is it's representative of the entire country. All 130 some schools have a conference representative in the room. And so I think that's good. I do think that the challenge that we probably face at the FCS level is, how do we get, East Coast schools to come out west to play? And how do we get their athletic directors to pay attention and watch, Big Sky After Dark football on ESPN2, right? And so we've been fortunate because we've been able to prove in the playoffs that our teams are really good and they're going to make deep runs. But yeah, it's 10 people. They rotate through every few years, and we do our best to get each of them all the information and to talk to our representative. Because what happens is, like, we have a conference representative there. So this year was the AD at Sac State, Mark Orr. And then we're also assigned one of the other 10 to be like our conference monitor. And we do the same thing. I'm on the men's basketball committee. We do the same thing. We get assigned conferences to follow. And so this individual, Mark Wharton, who's the AD at Tennessee Chattanooga, he would, once a week, we'd hop on a call for 30 minutes and just talk about what happened in the Big Sky. So then when he would report back to the committee, here's what I saw, here's what I heard from the Big Sky, here's what's going on with their teams. Because one of the things that's important as you start to sort through this, and we're going to have the same problem, the FBS is going to have the same problem. A starting quarterback might miss 2 games, and if they lose a game, you want to be able to take that into account for them on the playoff scale. And so some of those nuances only the conference knows about. I wouldn't expect, Mark Wharton at Tennessee Chattanooga, as I said, to know everything about the quarterback at Idaho, and they've played 4 different quarterbacks this year, right? Or know about Montana State's quarterback. They should know some players, but they're not going to know all those specifics. That's our job as a conference to make sure they know that. And it's the same thing in the FBS room as well. They got to sort out all of those things as they think about bringing teams into the field.
Okay, two more. We'll cut you loose here. I appreciate the time. This is really enlightening on a bunch of levels. The Pac-12, right? I've lived this league for over 20 years. You're in the footprint with where your conference resides. A lot of schools either play Pac-12 schools, have in the past, will in the future. Some may even become a Pac-12 school. Like, how do you navigate the world, which is the reality of this historic, now would be 109-year-old conference, rebuilding in the fashion that it is? Everybody. Like, everybody knows the players, like, especially at the level you're at. Like, I'm just kind of curious to be in your shoes, observing it, maybe having dialogue around it. Like, what can you share with us about your thoughts on the rebuild of a very historic league?
Like you and many others, really sad about what happened to the Pac-12. It's been a part of college athletics for as long as you and I have been around, and I'm older than you, Yogi. So really sad about the way that happened. I watch with very keen eyes and have a lot of conversations about what's happening with Pac-12 and the Mountain West and the movement around there, and it might affect our schools at some point. Who knows? For us, it's a lesson, and you worry about what you can control. And I can't control what any of those conferences do. I do know this. I do know that the Pac-12 bringing in Gonzaga is a really good thing for them monetarily and competitive-wise. They still have to add, for sure, 1 more member. My guess is they add 2 more. And the reason you want to be at 9 football schools is you want to play 8 conference football games. You don't want to play 7 conference football games. I think that's a bad number. And, and Teresa and I are good friends, but we don't talk about this stuff. That's the big domino yet to fall out west is how do they get 2 more football playing institutions into the Pac-12? Do they look back east to the Tulane and Memphises of the world? Do they go look to the Mountain West? Who knows what they do? Because that domino falls, and then there's a reaction after that. If they go back into the Mountain West, does the Mountain West need to add some schools? And even though they haven't looked at the FCS area yet, there's some attractive FCS options out there potentially for them. And then we wait and see kind of how that plays out. Nothing we can do in the Big Sky is going to if one of our schools desperately wants to be an FBS member and they get an invite, there's nothing we can do to stop them. Yeah. We're not going to pay enough money to keep them. So, again, I worry about what we can control. And my job as the commissioner of the Big Sky is to make sure our presidents and ADs have all the information, their eyes wide open to the pros and cons of being at that level. I lived for 6 years as a G5 AD, and there's some good things about it, but there's some really tough, challenging things as well. And some of our teams are used to playing for a national championship and hosting playoff games. That's not going to happen at the FBS level. You're not going to host a playoff game ever, and your chances of winning a national championship become awful slim. So that's something, like I said, my job is to make sure our people have all the information they need. And then if they decide to go, then, we pat them on the back, tell them good luck. And, we'll see the way that plays out. But it's while it's a quiet time right now, there's more dominoes left to fall in the future.
Okay, so let's finish up here with the dominoes. Dominoes are falling in the coaching world. I believe if you can coach at Idaho and Jason Eck, you can coach anywhere. There's a world where it's ebbing and flowing. Give me the hottest coordinator. Give me an elite communicator. Give me the young guy. Give me Kurt Signetti, right? Like, I look at you as somebody who's led this league coming up on your 6-year anniversary. I also look at the landscape of college athletics drastically changing. When you talk to coaches or you advise coaches or even someone in your shoes, I'd be curious like how you view the future of the profession based on the experiences in the Big Sky that your coaches have, that you have had. And if you could look out 5 years from now, what do you see for yourself? What do you see for some of the schools and the coaches that are thriving within your league? Because you got 5 going to the playoffs this weekend.
The future is pretty murky right now, Yogi. There's no way to put that. At a very broad level, going back to my point earlier about the financial implications of no rules. Until that gets settled, there is no calm waters in sight. Because on one hand, the biggest brands have to now next year pay their student athletes $20 million while also cutting rosters to fit under the House settlement. And we need more money to pay our student athletes than we had last year. And so those don't blend. So until there's some settlement of that, this is all messy. And because it's messy at the highest level, that makes it messy for all of us at the mid-level as well. Here's what I like about what's going on. I like the fact that our student athletes can make money off the work they're doing. I think that's great. So if we can just come to some agreement, some types of rules around it, I think the future is really bright. People love college athletics. You mentioned it before. All you got to do is walk on a college campus and you immediately feel invigorated. It's why I work in college sports. It's why my career, 30 plus years now, has been built on that, because I love being on a college campus. When I was an AD and I was having a rough day, I just went and watched a practice for 5 minutes and I felt better. Didn't matter what sport it was. Now what I do is I like traveling to our campuses, and I'll just pop in and talk to coaches. I'll talk to the student athletes. I'll walk around the campus. I'll talk to people. I'll wear the logo. People know who I am. It's that type of stuff. So, and that invigorates me. Okay. So at a base level, what we do and how we do it and what we have is incredible. And it will continue to be that way. And we have to protect it, because it's like the public trust that everybody I know feels passion and excitement about some brand in college athletics, whether it's Nevada or it's Yale or it's Texas, right? Or it's Northern Colorado in the Big Sky. Somebody loves some school. So as long as we have that, we're going to find our way, because there's too many people that care too much about it, and it's too valuable an entity. So when I talk to people like our coaches, what I keep encouraging them to do is keep buying into what their student athletes are trying to do, and pour yourself into them to help them on their journey, because that's still your responsibility as a coach. Yeah, guess what? You might not have that player for 4 years, and 20 years ago you did. You might only have them for a year, but don't treat them any differently. Don't pour into them any less, because that's going to be best for them, and it's going to be best for you and the institution you represent. And so I think the future is really bright. I think we've got, like I said, increased awareness and increased attention on it for lots of reasons. We just have to make sure we continue to keep our focus on what's most important. And if we do that, good things are ahead.
One of my dearest friends, Chris Peterson, often reminds me, when times get tough, just go do the next right thing. And that's how I
love
decipher
it. That's
what
a great
you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay,
and Coach Peterson knows that. I mean, that's the type of coach he was, and that's why he had all the success he had.
Yeah, kicking it off at UC Davis. So for you, I don't know what the next right thing is. Like, what game are you going to go to? Like, how do you navigate 5 teams in the playoffs? I know we got some buys, but I'm just kind of curious. Like, can you let us know what your weekend will be like?
So I'm kind of having fun here, because I'm actually in Houston right now filming this, because my son plays basketball in our league at Northern Arizona University. Yeah. And so they're playing tonight and tomorrow here in Houston. So my wife and I flew down here, and we're going to watch our son play. And then I'm going to head up to Abilene, Texas. Abilene Christian is hosting Northern Arizona in football, the first round. So we have 2 games in the first round at Montana Saturday night, and then NAU plays at Abilene Christian. NAU hasn't been in the playoffs in 7 years, so I definitely wanted to come watch them play. I've been to Montana a couple times this year, and I'll probably catch them later in the playoffs. But my goal is to, in the regular season, I make sure I see every football team play once, either on the road at home. So I'm able to talk to the coach, talk to some of the players, just kind of get a feel for how things are going. And in the playoffs, if we get a couple of victories this Saturday, the staff is going to be spread out. Because we try to be as many games as possible. So, but what a fun time of year! I mean, it's the playoffs, so it's that new energy that flows into programs around the playoffs, and just a fun time of year to get that feeling on a Saturday about you either survive or die, and let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. I've always felt, even in high school in Pennsylvania, if you were practicing on Thanksgiving, that means good things were happening in your season. Same thing for everybody in your league and all across college football. Hey, thanks for the time. Really appreciate it. Really glad we finally were able to connect in this type of arena. I know our fans at Y Option will love this. College football through the lens of the West. You have such a great footprint. I know you're really proud of it, and we are really proud to have you on today. So thank you very much. Commissioner Tom Wistrcill. Thanks, man.
Great. Yeah, great to be with you, Yogi, and keep up the great work. And I look forward to seeing you down the road.
You got it, brother. Talk to you soon. It's the Afterglow. Jim Thornby, Yogi Roth. That was our guest. Really appreciate Tom Wistrcill, the commissioner of the Big Sky's time. Jim, your takeaways from that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, he's just got me fired up for the playoffs, for both playoffs now. Like, when this time of year, when you're working for a conference, you don't have a lot of bandwidth for stuff outside of your own conference. But now that I am freed of those shackles, if you want to say, I will get to spend a lot more time watching all the other conferences and now all the other levels. And I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to watching NAU play. Go Jacks. So let's get it going. I think he's got me excited for how his description of what the now FBS playoffs are going to be, and how just that intensity is just going to ramp up.
Yeah, I think that's a bunch of takeaways, a bunch of thoughtful ones from that dialogue. I think from a football fandom standpoint, what he referenced about, like, to your point, playoff energy, I can't wait to see that. Like, how do home teams navigate that enthusiasm for the first time in South Bend or in State College? How do the road teams navigate it for the first time? Do the road teams that have been in the CFP, do they handle it better? Like, that performance anxiety, I cannot wait to watch as you and I continue this road here. Regular season may be ending, a Y option. Our road trip is just beginning. To that point, I want to thank BK and his family allowing me and my family to be here. This is my remote studio, Jim. I think I get used to this out in Palm Desert on Thanksgiving week. I kind of like being outside. I got no shoes on. I got shorts on. I might jump in the water after this, get a little activity on. So that's cool. But more importantly, for you, Jim, I am curious. It is Thanksgiving. It is cliche, but it is powerful. Like, what do you think you're thankful for here as we sit and say goodbye to our listeners here on Thanksgiving weekend?
Well, obviously thankful for everybody who's paying attention to this or watching this or listening to this or whatever. Thankful for you and for just being able to continue to have these conversations. I'll give one football thank you here. I'm going to be thankful to be able to watch Noah and T-Mac play together for the last time this weekend. I mean, you think about it, they've been playing together since they were in the 8th grade, and this will almost undoubtedly be Tetero McMillan's last college football game. So we'll see what happens with Noah's future from here on out. But with T-Mac, I would imagine that he will be playing in the NFL this time next year. So we'll be getting excited to watch that game as they take on the Sun Devils. No better way to end a college career.
Oh, what a game. There's so much to talk about on that. Like, I can't wait for Monday to fully debrief. We got a lot going on next week, but just stay in the moment for this week. Thanksgiving, really thankful for you, Jim, and our team here at Y Option. Like, you pour into it every day. You've gone for it with an enthusiasm unknown to mankind, which I appreciate that. And our community for pouring back into us. And then I think for both of us, like, our families are both, hey, I need you to be quiet over here as I'm recording the podcast. Hey, I need you to do this as I'm recording the podcast. Like, they've both been great. So thank you to the Thornbys and our squad as well. And then I think as we head into Thanksgiving, I'm really just looking forward to calling one more game. Like, my favorite part of college football is standing at the 50 and calling a game and get to do it one more time. Do it in an iconic place at the Rose Bowl. Keith Jackson, Kirk Herbstreit made it famous. It's Keith Jackson Herbstreit broadcast booth. It's the elevators, all the things there at the Rose Bowl. I know it won't be the Rose Bowl. It won't be sold out, but I still treat it as such every time I'm there. My kids are coming. We'll run around the field afterwards. So, like, I can't wait for the game, and I can't wait for the post game. And then I can't believe it's going to be, another 8 months before I call another one. But we got a lot to talk about. We're going to the Big Ten title. We got the Heisman. We got the playoff. Like, it feels like there's this whole other season, which we are going to sleep, get that turkey-based nap in, whatever that's called for the non-vegetarians out there. And there it is, folks. All right. Big thank you to Tom Wistrcill and your time. Really appreciate Dan Satter setting that up at the Big Sky Conference. Big thanks to you, Jim, and thankful to our community. Enjoy this week. I know it's a longer episode. We only did one this week. There's a lot of storylines. There's a lot going on. As always, stay steady. Don't miss a moment, because you're going to be wishing your team had one more game to play, and you're going to be wishing those seniors had one more time to run out of the tunnel. So channel your inner Jim Thornby. Enjoy Arizona this weekend, regardless of the outcome. There it is, folks. Lots of love. Happy Thanksgiving. Peace.